All right, topic number 3 in today's discussion about what to do when things go wrong. We're specifically talking about contest prep. Is what are we going to do when your rate of loss is too slow? Now, this is contest prep in a nutshell. It's navigating between rate of loss being too fast, being right on the mark, being too slow. When it comes to being too slow, the first thing I talked about when we opened up this discussion was having patience. I would really suggest that you have patience. You don't overjump your ability, or if you're a coach, don't overjump making changes. If you're an athlete, just understand that sometimes the process takes a little while. It takes a little while to be in a deficit before you actually see the results and changes of that deficit. But sooner or later, if you started prep 20 weeks out and 15 weeks out, you haven't made changes, it's time to start making those changes. So what I typically do is, I do in terms of energy balance, I do 2 things off the bat. I typically add just a little bit of cardio, and then I just make sure that the cardio is a little bit more assertive. And then I also make a slight reduction in food. So then when it comes to that next change or set of changes, I'm going to make, typically in most cases, I'm going to make 2 or 3 changes before I even consider anything in the fat burner realm. When it comes to, when I say 2 or 3 changes, that means change the diet 2 or 3 times, change the cardio 2 or 3 times. And then I'm looking at fat burners typically within the 12 to 10 week out period. So if you're just stalled out, I talked about this concept in the last video, but there's a lot of individuals, myself included, that has a very adaptive metabolism. So when I was really eating a ton of food, I could eat a ton of food and not get fat. But in the same token, in the same context, I'm somebody that if I do not refeed heavily during a contest prep, my ability to continue to lose fat stalls. So I have to keep refeeds in high, heavy, and early to keep losing fat. So there's a few things here. When it comes to your rate of loss being too slow, you might simply not be under your food intake marker that's going to allow you to lose fat. And what I mean, that some of us have a gap range of calories where we're just going to maintain weight in that gap. It could be anywhere from, for example, say 4,200 calories to 3,400 calories. You might have been right at 4,200 at the end of your off season, but you might have only pulled the 3,800 calories to start the prep. And you really need to get under 3,400 to get that result that you want, or a combination of increasing energy expenditure plus the caloric reduction. All right, so you just have to find the range of where your body's going to start to take off, and then from there, then you have to monitor the rate of loss per week or visual change per week to keep that going. But that's what I was essentially say to start is, don't get discouraged, be patient. But for some of us, we have to find the tipping point of when our body's going to start to lose fat, simply because we have this range of calories where it's a maintenance range. And like I said, to start the prep or to end the off season, you might have been at your peak maintenance range, but you haven't gotten to the low end to actually start the fat loss process yet.
I think that us as coaches, in your mind, do you have an idea? Because I have an idea what I want someone to look like at pretty much 4 week checkpoints, right? So you have an idea of what you want them to look like at 16 out. 12 out, 8 out.
Yeah.
And then once I'm at 8 out, it's 2 weeks. I know what I want them to look like: 6 out, 4 out, 2 out in my mind.
Right.
So when we're trying to establish how slow of what's too slow, it's hard for us to give an answer to that, a black and white answer, because we're computing things in our brain that we can't really put into words.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we just kind of know, if we need to step on the gas and what we need to do. But again, if you have the standardization set in place, it's easy to figure out. But to give an answer to people, that's kind of where the art of coaching comes in, and having an eye for it. That's the part that people don't get. That's beyond just staring at numbers. And, some people don't even look at pictures of their clients. So that's where the actual art of coaching comes in. The other thing I want to mention is outliers, let's use Nick Walker for an example of what this prep has been like for him.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Right. Every guy they come to us and they want to be hey, I want to, I'm going to grow into the show.
Right.
Man, 99% of the time, if you're not steadily dropping scale weight you're not improving.
Natural or enhanced.
Natural or enhanced. If the scale's moving down and down and down, the better you're going to look most of the time. Nick Walker's been in floating in the 270s for how many weeks now?
I mean, since the start of prep.
Yeah.
So
And
12 weeks.
Yeah, and that's not something you can like just replicate. That kind of stuff just kind of happens. He's just on a roll. Like he's in a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that's not something that someone can come to us and be like, okay, that's what we're going to do, man. We're going to keep you right here. You're going to start your prep at 265 and you're going to just kind of stay there and get harder the whole time. Like
Right.
that's not normal.
Right.
That's an outlier.
Yeah. Matt just made a really good point. So I think that the cosmetic look, I mean, again, we're physique athletes that are going on stage to be judged based on our cosmetic look. So the cosmetic look should always be considered during the process. For a natural athlete, you have got to be driving down the weight. And I've worked with some natural athletes that are giving themselves the benefit of the doubt and being like, yeah, man, like I really think I'm changing even though my weight's not moving. And I'm like, yeah, you know, because like realistically, if there's nothing inducing a state of adding more tissue for that individual, the weight has to come down. Now, also, I don't want to be naive and deceive you guys because that's not what we're about. But on the other end of the spectrum, we're not even discussing, you know, hormones right now. So when hormones go in, you really have to look at the cosmetic look because there can be a Nick Walker. There's a lot of examples of this where the weight doesn't really change, but the cosmetic look changes a lot. And I wouldn't view that as a slowed fat loss rate, which is the overall video. So you need to be aware of that as well. And that's why pictures are so important in the same spot, the same time of day, same consistent variables. That has to be part of your prep. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that.
Yeah.
I think there's an overall thing that's going to be hit on 1,000 different times when we do these roundtables, but never build rules based off of exceptions. Nick Walker and people that can do things like that consistently are not the people that you look at to make the rules. You don't look at Ronnie Coleman and decide that I'm going to do exactly what he did because it worked great for him. He was the best ever. You don't make rules off of people that are head and shoulders above everybody else with what they've been just endowed with to be able to do.
Sure.
But
And even though he's Nick Walker, like the next year might be totally different.
Right.
You know, this may not happen ever again.
Yeah.
You know, and but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I think people, I get that a lot from guys that expect that to happen.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And I think there's something else too that can help, kind of like, which is the X's and O's type thing of what to do as a coach or just somebody that's watching themselves do this process, is looking at hunger consistently enough. Asking once a week might give you something, but having them track, like at the end of the day, which is what I do with my people, what was your hunger like all day?
Yeah.
What was it like between meals? What was the timing? All these little things that start to change over time. If you're seeing that the rate of loss isn't fast enough and you just made a change, they're like in their check and they're like, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm not changing at all, but like I'm starving. Like this is different. A week ago where we were at and we stopped making progress, no scale weight happened. Like there was no change whatsoever, but now I'm about to eat off my hand. At that point, you don't go, well, scale weight trend isn't what I want it to be, so here you go. Here's another drop. You go, okay, you just wait. Talk to me again tomorrow.
Yeah, wait.
Talk to me again in 2 days. Keep sending me pictures and then update me on how things are feeling. And then just by some stroke of magic, that hunger turns into something. And then bam, you start to get that drop and then the snowball just rolled over the hill.
Yeah, and that's where the patience comes in and knowing when not to overreact and getting feedback, and that's why we ask all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. If I wasn't working with you and you weren't patient and someone was expecting me, coaching me, and expecting me to drop weight off the bat 3 to 5 pounds, that's never been me.
You'd be eating no food right now.
Yeah, I'd be eating no food right now, and we're only a few weeks into prep. And if they were looking for that immediate change in the scale, but not paying attention to cosmetically how I look, how I'm changing, like I like this topic because I can speak from experience. Because I'm someone very slow to move in the initial, out of the gate, beginning in a deficit. It takes me a while to get.
Really, you're slow to move everything except for the last 2 weeks.
No, I am. And I don't want to say my body's stubborn, but it just, it takes a lot out of me to force a change, regardless of my environment or, where energy output is in terms of my training, my cardio, what performance looks like there. my diet being on point, like I can still just, it doesn't fall off of me. Like you hear a lot of people say, well, it's not progress in the first week of dieting. You've just lost water weight. Like that doesn't even happen to me. Like for example, last week I was 3 pounds lighter than I was this week. And I've been consistently sitting at that higher weight. And if I only paid attention to the number on the scale, I think a lot of people get so tied up in the plateau from just the perspective of the scale reading, and they don't look at pictures. So I sent Matt my check-ins yesterday, and I also sent him a side-by-side of a photo of this week compared to a photo last week, and it looks like I could have lost 5 pounds, but
Right.
that wasn't the case. I had gained 3. But also keeping in mind that I'm still improving in the gym. I'm not eating enough to where that starts to suffer right now at this point. I'm making PRs in the gym, whether it's a few more reps, adding 2.5, 5 pounds here and there. I'm sleeping. I'm recovering well. Since I was sick with COVID, I was the same weight back then when I had gotten off the couch after 2 weeks, but I don't look the same 146 that I looked like after I was sick, 146. I think it's important to gauge photos and your progress and what you're doing in the gym too. Because if your performance is declining, if cardio is getting harder to push through, granted, it's not going to be, hopefully it's not so difficult as you're just starting out prep, because you should still be able to have the energy to give to all of that.
Yeah.
But if the rate of that progress is starting to decline and you aren't changing physically and the scale's still not budging, and there's something off there. But in my case, it's the scale here is just a tool for us to kind of just further prove that my performance in the gym is up. I'm feeling better than I did. And I've told you, I feel like I've made more progress in the last few weeks than I had after nationals in November to when I got sick mid-February. I just think that if I was solely focusing on the scale, or if I, as a coach, was only considering the scale as a factor to whether things need to be changed or not, I'd be overlooking a lot of things that can't be overlooked, because then you're not getting the entire picture. You're not addressing the points that need to be addressed. The scale is just the tool, and the tool that told us yesterday that, I'm making the right progress for right now. We're just going to hold off. We're going to ride this out. We're going to keep doing what we're doing, because physically you're changing, and performance in the gym is as good as it can be and going really well. And we don't want to make that suffer for the sake of feeling a little bit eased at our minds to have a lesser scale reading.
Yeah. And then people are going to hear that and be like, because some people overreact and like, well, I don't even need to know what the scale's. I don't even need to see the scale. That's not what we're saying. The scale can be important. It can be an indicator, but it's only one indicator or one piece of the puzzle that we're looking at. Yeah. But being realistic, like you could probably prep Nick without even knowing his weight.
Yeah.
But that's not normal.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe this shouldn't need to be said, but I think it kind of does with the current state of affairs in the bodybuilding world. If you are getting prepped or dieted by a coaching service or person that only looks at a single variable and it is the scale, run.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, because you're being judged by what you look like.
I spend more time reading their questions that they've filled out and the biofeedback than I do, analyzing what they weighed this week, what they weighed last week.
Yeah.
I pay more attention to, like what you said, how hungry are you? Is it after this meal? Is it during training? Is it after training?
Yeah.
Is it in the morning when you first wake up? And how tired they are, if their rate of recovery is slow, like all those things. There's more to weight loss and tissue gain than just the number on the scale.
Yep.